Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, FDA approved for over 20 years. So, talk to your specialist to see if Botox Cosmetic is right for you.
For full prescribing information, including boxed warning, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
Remember to ask for Botox Cosmetic by name. To see for yourself and learn more, visit BotoxCosmetic.com. That's BotoxCosmetic.com.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest, the last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your
windshield wipers? eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying, just beautiful.
Whatever you love, find it on eBay. eBay. Things people love.
All right. Welcome back to the Misfit Nation. When I joined the Army in 1993, it was due to the influence from my biggest mentor, my father, Tom the Torch LaMonica. He served in the Army just prior to Vietnam. He also introduced me to many of the guys he grew up with and his friends from Jersey City who made that trip to Indochina and fought for our country. Their stories indirectly influenced me to join the Army. Their generation paved the way through hardship for our generation of veterans. They endured undue hardships from their own countrymen. They were spit on when they got home, called baby killers, and were treated like genuine crap. Even the VA treated them like crap. This, of course, is not the case now, as veterans have a plethora of organizations that are set up to help them, and everyone thanks them for their service. Our next guest was part of this generation as well. He served in Vietnam as an infantry officer and Chinook pilot, so he has stories from both the air perspective and the ground perspective of this war. So let's get Mr. Larry Freeland, 101st Airborne Division veteran, and now author, on here. Welcome to the Misfit Nation, Mr. Larry Freeland. How you doing, Larry?
Doing fine, and yourself?
Awesome, doing great here. Little travel today, but I'm doing well. I was able to wake up this morning and stay upright.
Well, that's an accomplishment. As we were talking earlier, I look forward to waking up every morning at my age. So it's a good day when you do.
That's right, sir. So if you don't mind, Larry, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience, go back as far as you want, and then kind of bring it closer to where we are now.
Okay, great. Well, I'm a retired fellow, a little old. My early days when I graduated from college back in the 68, I was in 64 to 68. The Vietnam War was going on, and of course in 67, 68 it really picked up, and every male was subject to the draft, and I certainly was one of them. I tried to get into the Navy aviation program back then, and didn't quite make it. Then tried to get in the Air Force aviation program. I wanted to fly back then. My dad was a career Air Force officer for 30 years, and kind of grew up with it. And I did get accepted to the Air Force flight program. When I graduated in June of 68 from the University of South Florida in Tampa, my draft board, as all the fellas back then put up with, was constantly after you in college. You had to post with them every quarter or semester that you were still in school, and once you finished, they would come after you pretty much. And they did me, and they didn't give me a deferment. I couldn't start my Air Force training until like October. They were so backed up. But the draft board wouldn't give me a deferment, so I ended up getting drafted into the Army. Make a long story short, when I was in there, they were, having been a college graduate, anybody with a college degree, the Army was trying to get them to go to OCS. And eventually, after I got assigned to advanced infantry training, I thought, well, I think I'll try officer school just to prolong my potentially not having to go to Vietnam. But went to OCS in Fort Benning Infantry, got out of that, was there 6 months, applied to flight school and was accepted, and then spent a year in flight school between Texas and Alabama, Fort Rucker. And eventually, I've been in the Army a little over 2 years when I was finally sent over to Vietnam in January the 3rd of 1971 as an infantry officer and a CH-47 helicopter pilot. I spent a year there, assigned with the 101st. I participated in a major operation, which I'll probably chat about a little later in our conversation today, called Lam Son 719. It was an invasion by the South Vietnamese forces into Laos, trying to cut off the Ho Chi Minh Trail supply line down to the south. We reactivated Khe Sanh, expanded it, built some additional heliports, and the 101st was charged with providing the South Vietnamese Army with all the helicopter support. And we had about 650 helicopters in the division at the time. So we spent 2 months supporting them in their Laos operation, and we had to augment ourselves by about another 100 helicopters. And again, I'll probably cover a little bit of that later. When that ended, I still had about 9 months left in country. The war was winding down. The President Nixon was Vietnamizing the war and turning it over to the South. So our intensity of operations, both on the ground and in the air, and I Corps, which was closest to the North Vietnamese border, wound down quite a bit. And so it slowed down, and we didn't have a whole lot of activity. We still had some, but the first 4 months of my tour with the Laos thing and the DMZ stuff that was going on was pretty intense. And then the last 7 or 8 months wasn't too bad. Came home, was stationed at Benning for a year and a half, assigned to the general staff. And then I went ahead and got out of the service in September of 1973. I'd always wanted to work for a bank, so I was very fortunate to get hired on with Trust Company in Atlanta. And I'm really quite proud of this. The general I worked for and the colonels I worked for, when they found out I was getting out, they supported me, and they actually made phone calls to presidents of several banks and chairman of the boards of different companies to ask that they give me an interview. And I ended up getting 7 or 8 interviews from different major companies, and most of them offered me a job. So I was quite pleased with that. And that's a lesson to be learned for a lot of folks. If you do a good job and you have some mentors around you, they'll potentially help you move on up or down up the chain, so to speak, or in other opportunities. And these senior officers certainly did me a solid and helped me kick off my banking career, which ran for about 28 years here in the Atlanta area. I took early retirement from that, became a consultant in Atlanta financial consultant for 3 years, and then just got kind of tired of the corporate life and the corporate scenario, and always thought I wanted to be a teacher. So make a long story short, I got into college instructing for about 7 years and taught at a college, leadership and management development. Took full retirement about 7 years ago when I turned, it's 10 years ago now. Yeah, I'm going to be 75. I took full retirement at 65 and just I've been spending my time doing a lot of volunteer stuff for different causes and traveling. And I've got a Corvette. I love Corvettes, and we do a little road trips on Corvettes and go to a lot of what's called Petite Le Mans races. We're big Le Mans fans. And matter of fact, we're going next month to the Le Mans here in Atlanta, 4-day event. And then kind of brings us to my book. Do you want me to chat about that a little bit?
Let's go into some of your nonprofit stuff you've done. I've seen you've done stuff with veteran organizations, and like me, you got involved with Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. How'd you get involved with cystic fibrosis?
Well, that's a good question. Wow, that's a small community. My oldest granddaughter, Elena Goodrow, was born with CF. She's 17 now, turned 17 on March the 3rd. But born here in Atlanta, and we almost lost her when she was born. She had a severe stomach blockage and spent her first 8 weeks in intensive care here at in the Children's Hospital at Emory. I won't go into all that, but she struggled there for a good while and eventually pulled through. And first several years of her life was kind of nick and tuck with breathing and digestive issues. But I'm happy to report she's doing quite well and very active 17-year-old young lady. but with her birth and the issues she was putting up with, I was just drawn into doing what I could to help. When the more I learned about CF and what needed to be done for it, my wife and I became very active and ended up being involved in 3 to 4 major events every year, supporting the foundation and helping to raise awareness and funds for that. We've been involved in one of the major events, was called Wine and Roses, an annual white tie gala here. And we just finished our 13th year being on the committee for that. We just had the event 2 weeks ago for this year, and enjoyed doing that. A lot of great people involved, and it's made a big difference, because when Elena was first born 17 years ago, the life expectancy of folks born with CF was in, I think, the 30s or low 30s. And now it's well into the high 40s and early 50s. There's been tremendous advancement in medications and treatments, particularly the last 5 years. I'm happy to say that Elena's been a beneficiary of a lot of that. So we just felt compelled to do what we could. And that did and does take up a lot of our time right there with CF. How'd you get involved in it?
When I was growing up, one of my good buddies on my street, Kirk, he was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. We were the same age. And by the time we got to high school, 1987-ish, 88, we were graduating in 88, 87, he was going to the hospital in New York a lot because of different infections and different things. He used to have to go once a month and such. And we'd go visit him in the hospital in New York and see him. By the time he got to his senior year, he'd seen a lot of the kids that he was going to the hospital with had lost their battle. So he kind of just gave up hope at that point. So it took a lot for all of us to go over there and pump him up and have him actually be at our graduation in 88.
Mm-hmm.
Then flash forward, I joined the Army. He became an EMT. He was doing great things. 2005, I got stationed in Anniston, Alabama, and met a good buddy of mine, Randy Bright, whose stepdaughter at the time, Haley, had cystic fibrosis.
Oh,
and one day he said, "You want to help us with this fundraiser?" It was like a blind auction, I think it was at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And you just go around putting stuff in there, and they did a walk with the candles. He said, "I wonder what we could do better." So we came up with the Haley's Team Twilight 5K run in Anniston, Alabama at that point. This year would be the 16th. Next year would be the 16th year of it. We had to take 2 years off because of COVID, of course. But hopefully this year we're able to come back and running. In 2012, on my final deployment, Kirk got sick again. He's now 42 years old. And it was June 18th. I got wounded at, I think it was 4 in the afternoon. And he had passed away about the same exact time.
Oh, my gosh.
I was in Afghanistan. He was in New Jersey. So
yeah.
It was kind of crazy, but that's how I got hooked in with cystic fibrosis.
It's a small world, because there's only, numbers vary a little bit, but 33 to 35,000 people in this country living with it. So
right.
It's not population. Incredible. But it's a deadly disease. They've made a lot of progress, but it's still, it's still a tough one to have, and one of the more expensive ones too to have.
Yes. I know with Haley, because of our help with the race, at UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham, they were able to use experimental stuff on her and help her progress and do better. She graduated from college. She graduated last year, but she's actually going to walk in December, just to show that she walked, and that'll be a great time for everybody.
Oh, that's cool. That's good. Yeah. Most of the CF patients I've been around through our involvement are really, with almost all cases, are bright young people that are highly motivated. They have to be, because of the regimen they have to go through virtually every day. They're battling for their life virtually every day, and there's things they've got to do just to maintain their health and try not to get sick. So they're a pretty disciplined bunch of young people that have it.
And I think everyone that I've met, like you said, I think they all take the challenges outside of the fight that they have for their own life. They take every challenge that they have to be successful at other things, as they have to do it to make sure they do things right. And they all wind up being successful wherever they go.
That's true. Well, we're very proud of Elena. She's one that always grew up kind of wanting to be an actress, a singer, and those kind of things. And She's done quite a bit of that as a young person. She writes her own music and plays not a violin, but not a banjo either, a guitar, and plays the harp. She actually played for our last Wine and Roses a couple of weeks ago. That's the second year in a row where she's been our big entertainment for the cocktail hour, when you've got 300-400 people wandering around drinking and eating hors d'oeuvres and listening to a young lady with CF play the harp. It's quite an experience.
That kind of puts a little light on the subject.
Yeah, it draws attention to it, and but we're all quite proud of her. She's motivated and done quite well, and we hope that she continues and the goals she's setting for herself. But that's the big reason we've been involved in that. And since getting out of the Army, I've always done what I could for veteran groups and organizations. Mostly been, I call it under the radar, helping where I can. When I got out of the Army in '73 from Vietnam, like most fellows, and I don't speak for them, I'll just speak for myself. I just wanted to put it behind me and basically forget about it. What I didn't throw away or give away, a few things I kept, I packed in a box and stuck it away. And I really didn't pay much attention to any of it until well into the late 80s. But I did, like I said, I did help folks whenever I could in the community that were veterans and organizations, but I didn't get active in them. I just would do what I could, like I say, under the radar. It wasn't until the late 90s that I was kind of pulled back into doing some stuff, and it was my wife that did it. She encouraged me to get active again and join an organization or some veterans organization and just become a part of it. Make a long story short, I did. I joined a Veterans Alliance down in Forsyth County here in Georgia and Cumming back in the mid 90s that had just started up. And it was a unique group. It started in like June, and by December it had grown from almost 10, 15 fellas to over 100 fellas. And about half were World War II veterans, the Korean War veterans, and then Vietnam veterans. And I enjoyed that group. We formed ourselves. We went out and got our uniforms, new uniforms, spiffed them up. And we did that because up in our area and back in the 90s and forward, really, the military wasn't providing much in the way of military support for military funerals. And in North Georgia and Central Georgia, north of Atlanta, there are a lot of veterans retired and living in this area and dying, World War II, Korean, and of course, Vietnam guys. So we took it upon ourselves to form 5 teams of 15 men each, and we got a hold of a bunch of rifles, practice drilled, and we literally were performing military funerals 4 and 5 times a week with 15-man squads from Atlanta north in various cemeteries around North Georgia. I personally participated over the years in about 60 of them. So that was a very gratifying experience. And we did flag ceremonies and stuff like that, and for different major events where they needed a flag group to present the colors during the opening ceremonies.
Right.
That was an organization that really did some good and met a need that wasn't being met in this area. So I kind of phased out of that several years back. All the World War II fellows unfortunately passed away, and the Korean War guys pretty much. And the membership dropped over the years to just maybe a small number of fellas, and I got pulled in another direction and got to doing other stuff. So kind of backed out of that one. I did that for about 10 years, but that was very gratifying. I still am involved in helping where I can and other things, but not to the extent of that 10 years with that association.
Like you said, when your generation was coming out of Vietnam, there wasn't a lot there for you guys when you came out. There wasn't a lot of love for you guys when you came home. There was a lot of things that you guys went through, paved the way for our generation of veterans as we came out of the global war on terrorism or Desert Storm, I guess would be the first major portion of this.
Yeah.
And that there's a lot more organizations around now, and And then units, of course, now actually support all these ceremonies, the funeral details, opening ceremonies and stuff. So it kind of phased yourself out of that as well.
Yeah, my age, I mean, I consider myself healthy, get out and I'm active, but between my grandchildren and the travels and now my riding, I kind of want to, not being selfish, I want to do a little bit for myself and then again, help where I can.
Well, you deserve to do stuff for yourself. You've had a pretty eventful life. You served your country, then you served your community. It's time to think a little bit about yourself while still serving with a purpose where you can.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people don't realize this, but back in Vietnam era, when we were getting the war turned somewhere in the middle of it, I think it was Tet that really turned them against them. It should have been popular before Tet, but they went from kind of chastising the war and the people that were managing it at the top to chastising the soldiers that actually were there fighting it. And of course, the rest is history. For many years, and right through the end of the war, and when we came back, the Vietnam veteran was basically ostracized and forgotten about. Not that we were looking for a handout or anything, but it's the first time this country's really ever turned its back like that on its veterans. And all veterans group going back to Korea, Vietnam, World War II, World War I, the Civil War, Spanish-American War. They had their share of problems and so on, but they never really got like the Vietnam veterans did for some reason. And I think a lot of the fellas, and I'm one of them, said, man, this is wrong. And a lot of guys did what they could to, as you mentioned, say, hey, going forward, this end, and we got to support these guys and these ladies and men and women join the service and do what they do for us. They deserve better than what we got. So I think, I take a lot of pride in being a part of that. And certainly the Vietnam servicemen and women that did that are to be commended. And because the newer generations of warriors, they need that kind of support.
And it definitely shows the struggles you guys went through and to what we have now. It's night and day, and it's because of the struggles you went through, basically. Because as your generation's grandsons and sons were going off to this war, you guys all came together, not sitting together, but mindset together that these kids, these young men and women don't need to come home the way we did. Exactly. And it showed as we came home. Every time I came back, there was different people greeting us in every airport we came to. There was always someone there to say, welcome home, shake our hands, hand us their babies, take pictures with, and not spit on us like they did to you guys. So that's a big plus. And then having all these, there's too many organizations now, I think, but there's so many now. There's something for everybody.
Yeah. It's good what's happened and what's out there now. It just never should have happened what happened, but it did. But I'm glad that it's no longer like that out there. Your generation and the people, every veteran, no matter what war they're in or what generation they're in now and going forward, is going to have issues associated with, what he or she did and the effects it's going to have on them, because you just don't go off to war and not come home not affected in any fashion. You may not realize it at the time, but on you. So,
definitely.
And having a support system can help a great deal, actually, in the long run.
Definitely. It helps tremendously to have that support system in your backyard or in that group that you joined as you come home. It may just be a group that you think is just going to do exercise, but they're actually helping your brain as well at the same time. So it helps you the whole mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah. Well, how many tours did you do in Afghanistan?
I did four total tours between the two of them.
Wow. I had both my brothers are younger. My middle brother, Tom's gone. He passed about 4 years ago. He was a career Navy pilot. He served in the first Gulf War many years back. And after that, he was in a while. And then he got out after 27 years and went into private. He went into private, if you will. But my younger brother, Bob, he's gone too. He did 2 18-month tours in Iraq and 1 13-month tour in Afghanistan.
Wow.
But he was not in the service. He had been in the Army as a young guy, but got out college degree, and went to work for the IRS as a special undercover agent. And he was mandatorily retired at 50 because of the stress these guys work. A lot of people don't realize that, but there is a special, it may not be now, I don't know, but there's special units that do a lot of undercover work, particularly money laundering and drug and tax evasion. And he did that, but because of his training, he was assigned to the State Department for 3 years and worked out in Africa, going around I guess it was divided at that time into 4 quadrants, and he did the top 2 quadrants for 3 years, working out of the different embassies. And he picked up a lot of the local languages and customs and so on and so forth, and got quite good at some of the linguistics over there. When he retired at 50, my brother Tom and I always used to call him the cross between Dirty Harry and Rambo. He just loved the action. So he went to work. He signed up and went to work for a I forget what y'all called them, but it was a civilian-run organization that provided specialties to the to the military over there that needed linguistics or evidence gathering types or explosive experts. So he worked for a private company as a specialist, linguistics specialist, and a weapons explosive specialist. And he ended up working with 18 months in those FOBs out of Iraq with, I don't know if it was the 82nd Division or not. It was Airborne or Infantry Division. And he spent all his time working with the soldiers out in the FOBs. He just loved it out there. And then he went back. He came home, was home 6 months, and said, I got to go back. So he went back again with the same company for 18 months doing the same thing. He came back for about 5 months. Says, man, I still got to go. And he volunteered with a different company, signed on with a different company, went to Afghanistan for 13 months doing the same basic stuff on the FOBs. And he came back, and when we were talking after he got back, I said, Bob, you're crazy. Stay home. It's just tough as enough. He said, I am. He said, I don't give a lot of hope to Afghanistan. He said, but I do think Iraq might pull it through eventually. But between the two countries, he was not. I guess he wasn't as impressed in Afghanistan as he was in Iraq. But anyway, he did his share over there.
Definitely, that's a lot of time over there in the dirt. Yeah, in both countries.
He ended up writing a book about his experience from the first time over in Iraq, and it was a fictional book, but based obviously in some fact. And I remember reading it. Was pretty telling, some of the stuff that y'all put up with.
It's some gnarly things.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's kind of transition into your book now. Let's talk about LANSOM 719 and your actions there and how it came into this book.
Okay. This is the name of the book is Chariots in the Sky. It's a historical fiction. I wrote it that way. I didn't want to make it a what do you call it? A biography or an autobiography or a compilation of stories. There are a lot of them out there about, the Vietnam War and the helicopter aspect, and some really good ones. What I wanted to do was write a book and put the reader in the seat with the pilot. And if I did it right, the reader, when they got done, would say, my God, my main character's called TJ. He's a Huey assault helicopter pilot, infantry captain. And I wanted the reader, when they got done, to say, my God, I was TJ. I lived what he lived and experienced. I really wanted to put him in the seat and in the middle of the action. So I basically wrote it as a first-person historical fiction novel. I obviously drew on a lot of my experiences, and those are the men I flew with over there. And it's embedded in real events. The 101st was in the I Corps, and Lam Son was a real invasion that took place in February and March of 1971. And many of the storyline and many of the actions that are depicted in there, I drew from things I saw, heard, or did myself or experienced. So it has a lot of realism to it. And it's done quite well, I'm proud to say. And many of my reviewers have echoed several things. One of them being they felt like they were living the experience with TJ, which is one of the things I tried to accomplish in writing the book. But the reason I wrote it was many, many years ago, after I came back and got out, I just wanted to forget about it, which I pretty much did. But in 1987, 88, when Oliver Stone put out his movie Platoon, that was the first movie Vietnam that, in my opinion, kind of captured the flavor of it, if you will, or the emotion. 2 hours, he went a little over the top with some of his drama, but in 2 hours, you kind of got a feel for what a lot of, what we put up with, particularly the guys in the bush. And I think a lot of Vietnam veterans felt the same way. When I came out of the theater after seeing that movie, I looked at my wife and said, "My God, Linda, I've just gone to Vietnam again." But he inspired me, if you will, to think about producing a movie, because I'm a big movie buff, about the Vietnam helicopter aspect of the war, because he did it from the ground perspective, the grunt, and the helicopters are iconic to that war and were the major strategy in that, used as a major strategy in that war. And without the helicopters, the way it was fought anyway, you wouldn't have had a Vietnam War. So I thought making a movie similar to that about helicopter aspect would probably be a hit, and like to see it happen. I heard, being a movie buff, that he was going to produce a trilogy about Vietnam. So sometime after that movie, I gathered my thoughts. It was in early 1991. I reached out to him in a letter and said, "Hey, I've got this concept about a movie, and I understand you are going to do a trilogy, and Platoon was your first one. And I've got this idea I'd like to share with you." And I put a little bit in the query letter to him. And about a month later, I got a letter back from him. And he was very, being a Vietnam veteran himself, he was really very cordial. And he said, "Look," he said, I'm just paraphrasing, "I've got, I'm going to do a trilogy. My second one is in post-production now, will be coming out pretty soon." And that was Born on the 4th of July with Tom Cruise. And he says, "And I've got an idea for my third one. It's on the board. We're working on it now, and it doesn't involve helicopters." He said, "But what I'd recommend you do is, write it yourself or hook up with somebody and write a screenplay about the helicopter aspect of the war, and then see if you can't market it to some production companies." And he offered some suggestions and some books to look at and so on. So I read that letter and read it a couple times and set it aside for a while. And then I thought, well, now I'm inspired, if that's the right word. So I thought, I think I'm going to try it. So I went out and bought a bunch of books, and I spent the next year reading about screenplays, and then read some screenplays, and then started drafting up a few things. And I thought, well, I think I can do this. So I sat down when I was still working full time at a bank, and I sat down and on my spare time started working on a screenplay, and ultimately within about a year wrote it. I titled it The Flying Pachyderms. My unit was called the Pachyderms in Vietnam, and I wrote it as fiction, historical fiction, and passed it around to a whole bunch of people to get their feedback, and reacted to it. But everybody that read it said, "Man, you really need to turn this into a book. And if you want to get it on the screen, you probably have a better shot of getting a book. And if it catches fire, you might get a screen play out of it." But my mindset was to try and sell it as a screenplay. So I eventually finished it to my satisfaction, and I wrote query letters to 10 production companies out in Hollywood. And I heard back from 3 of them wanting to read the screenplay. So I sent them each a copy. And 2 of them got back to me within about a month and said, "It's a good job, but, we're going to pass." And then the other one, which is called Biltmore Pictures, which is still a big company in Hollywood, reached out to me and said, "Hey, we've read this. We like it. We're going to push it up our hierarchy of staff here and see what we think. And we might option it from you and see where we go." which I guess in the movie business, if they option, it means they're interested, and then they try and get the elements to put something together. I said, that's fantastic. Well, about 3 or 4 weeks later, I get a call from some lady at Biltmore who's pretty high up in their hierarchy and says, we're still interested. I need to get some more information from you. So we talked for about, again, a long time. And then it was about a month after that, I heard back from him, but said, we're going to pass on it. We have a war genre in post-production, which is going to be released very shortly. And if it does well, we already have a sequel on the books and potentially a sequel outline for a second sequel if that one does good. So we're going to have to pass. And, I got close, but no cigar. And that was really exciting, but it was also a little bit of a downer. But the movie they had in post-production was Sniper with Tom Berenger, which obviously did very well. And they did do a sequel after that one. So I lost out to Berenger. So after that, I got tired and I just boxed everything up, put it away. But I kept a couple copies of my screenplay lying around. And over the years, people would want to read it. And so I don't know how many people read it over the next 10 years or so. But a lot of people I would give a copy to and they'd read it and get it back to me. But everybody said, Larry, make a book out of it. Just make a book out of it. So I was just burned out and kind of just kept it to the side. But as 2018, 2019 rolls in, I had that story and I really wanted to try and get it out there. So I thought, what the heck? I think I'll try and write a book. So going into the end of 2019, I pulled out the box, started refreshing my memory a little bit about my research and screenplay and all that. And of course, 2020 rolls around, January, February, we have COVID. And then COVID got real big there in February. And then I sat down and said, what the hell? I'm going to write this book. I'm not going anywhere for 6 or 7 months. So I just started writing. And by the end of the summer, I had written a first draft of the manuscript for the book. And then I went out shopping for a publisher. I found one, Publish Authority. They took me on. As they say, the rest is history. The book's been published back in April 26th of this year, and it's on several websites and available through those. And you can order it through any bookstore you want. So I'm very proud of that. A lot of good comments got from it. The story itself. Let me touch on Lamsan real quick because that's part of the story. It occurs maybe in the first half of the book, and then it goes into the second half goes into the rest of the year and other things that happens. But Lamsan, in a short, just taking a minute or two, Lamsan 719 was the last major American operation of the Vietnam War. We were really into turning it over to the South Vietnamese. And this Lamsan operation was designed by the MACV, the South Vietnamese, and the high-level American planning group down in Saigon. And what they wanted to do was go in as deep as possible into Laos and cut off the trail and set back the North Vietnamese supply chain for at least a year or two. The previous year, in 1970, Nixon authorized invasion into Cambodia to do the same thing, and it was a short-lived invasion, but it was highly successful. And when the press and everybody in Washington got a hold of it, they went after Nixon, and he had to call it off in about 45 days or so after the operation started. But it really put a dent in the North Vietnamese supplies and operations, set them back over a year down there. So they wanted to do the same thing up north in Laos there, because a lot of the stuff was coming in there and then being shipped down through the Ashaw Valley and further south into 2 Corps or 3 Corps and 2 Corps. So, but they wanted it to be an all South operation because Nixon can't commit troops outside of South Vietnam anymore. So the plan was to send the South Vietnamese Army and some Marine units into Laos and let them go in 50, 60 miles and set up fire bases along this, what was called Route 9, a dirt road on both sides of the road on the higher elevations. There were ridge lines and high not necessarily mountains, but 3,000 foot high hills and so on, and let the mechanized units go down Route 9 and cut a big path deep into Laos and then destroy any caches they find and take on any NVA they find. It was hastily planned and put together and not well thought out. But anyway, we activated case time, brought in the aviation units. They brought up 22,000 Vietnamese, South Vietnamese military men, mostly Army, some Marines, and they started across the border on February the 1st. And we started setting up fire bases the next day inside Laos on both sides of Route 9. And as they made a little progress, we were putting fire bases further down Route 9. And within 2 weeks, within the end of the first week of putting them in there, things started to go south for them real quick. At the height of the battle, there was only like 22,000 South Vietnamese forces. And by the end of the second week, there was over 65,000 North Vietnamese Army troops pushed down in all up and down Route 9. So it was a lopsided battle by the end of the first week going into the second week. But the Americans, we provided all the air support. We would go in and help them set up their fire bases, resupply them with troops and ammunition and food and building supplies and take out their wounded and bring in fresh troops. By the end of the second week, things went really bad. And from that time until we got them out of there on April the 6th, which was basically 8 weeks of operations, which was supposed to be a 4-month operation, not 2. We suffered severely. Our helicopter force did. Let me just share with you a couple numbers here. It's staggering. Of the approximately 800 helicopters that were available to support Lam Son 719, 108 were lost in Laos. 618 were classified as having sustained battle damage. 20% of those we couldn't use. We just used them as scrap to repair the others. And we lost 72 helicopter crew members, 59 wounded, and 17 MIAs, all in the span of just 60 days. This was just the helicopter.
Wow.
It was the most intense operation for American helicopter pilots of the entire war. When we'd fly across the border, we'd figure it was 50-50 chance we would come back. My hat's off to the Huey, Cobra pilots, and the Loach pilots. They had to stay down basically on the deck, nap of the earth. They didn't get to go up. I flew Chinooks. We'd go into Laos high up at 6,000-7,000 feet, get over the bases we would support, and then we'd just do almost a 45-degree angle dive and just spiral right down over the fire base until we got close and yank back on our cyclic and pull up on the thrust rod, and the helicopter would damn near shake itself to death. We only did sling lows, and then they'd bring us in over to fire base. We'd drop them off and get out of there. From the time we got below 1,000 feet until we got above 1,000, we were shot at by everything. Machine guns were coming at us, 20 millimeter, 40 millimeter cannons, RPGs, and we get down near the ground, artillery rounds going off, mortar rounds going off. In some cases, towards the end of March, some of those fire bases were being overrun by NVA tanks. Helicopters, up until then, had never really, or at least our helicopters, had never really seen much action with tanks, but we did. So it was a very intense 60 days.
It sounds like it. A lot of heroic moves going in and out of Laos. And just the numbers you mentioned, that's insanity. How many were damaged? How many were lost? And then, of course, the human capital that was lost in that battle as well. Just with the helicopter crewmen, not to mention whatever infantrymen or others that were on the ground that we lost as well. That's just amazing. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, that's the thrust of the book. That's a story that that wanted to be told. There is some other books out there about it, and they're good. This one I wrote again, like I said, a first-person historical fiction with a main character. I wanted the reader to be there, and based on the feedback I've gotten over the last 5 months, most people feel like they were right there. So that mission accomplished.
Awesome. And it's funny you mentioned Sniper with Tom Berenger. The other night I was working on a paper and I watched the seventh installment of Sniper from 2017, wow. Sniper Ultimate Kill, and Tom Berenger was in that one as well.
Was he?
Yes.
That was a lifetime job for him.
Yeah, so 93, and that one was filmed 2017, and there's still one more I haven't seen, Sniper Assassins or something. So that's the last one, 2020.
Well, he did an incredible job in Platoon.
Yeah.
He did a great job in Sniper 1. I saw 1 and 2, which I enjoyed, but I haven't seen the others.
I didn't realize there was that many of them. I guess I missed a few in the middle there, but
I didn't either. But yeah.
So where can people get your book? Is it on all electronic ports, or is it a print book as well?
It's both. You can go to my website, and it's lowercase LarryFreeland.com, and you can get a flavor for the book, and you can see the reviews that I've got posted out there, and there are probably 20 or more. And then there's various articles from newspapers and magazines and some veterans groups that I've got posted. And then you can there's 5 sites you can go to, and you can go to any one of them. They're on my website. Barnes and Noble, the big one, the grill in the room, so to speak, Amazon. And then there's BAM, and there's let's see here. BAM, and then there's a couple others. But if you go to the website, they'll all be up there. Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Kaboo, KOBO, BAM, Books A Million, and IndieBound. Or you can go, if you have, if you're a bookie and you got your favorite bookstore, you can go to your bookstore and they can order it directly through there for you.
Awesome.
So it's in paperback, and it's in all forms of electronic. So the different all 5 of these have the electronic version on them. And these websites that I mentioned. So either paperback or electronic.
Awesome. And I think most people, they go, well, it's probably 50-50 right now. People like to either touch paper or feel it on their tablet or iPhone, or even the audio ones now. People like to have books read to them to make them feel, I guess, like someone's talking to them while they're driving. So that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah, I've been asked if we had it in audio yet, and the answer is no. That's a little more expensive of a conversion, but if it goes into next year and really does well and takes off, which I'm hoping it will, it's beginning to build some legs. We may look at putting it out in audio too.
Awesome, man. Larry, if you could give advice to a youngster who wants to write, or someone like me who's been out of the Army a little while now and is deciding to write a fictional book, what would you tell them?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, I'd say, if you want to do it, you need to stay focused, make a commitment, and then just don't lose sight of it. Number one, that's true in anything you pursue in life. But when it comes to writing a book, I would the most successful writers are avid readers of books. And they read different books, and they see what other authors are doing, how they're doing it, and they read current books, so they see what's moving, what people like most. So they kind of stay current in the book world, if you will, by reading books. And then, as far as actually writing a book, if you've not written one before, it'll be a little harder, I would think. But you would need to do a little bit of, I'd get a book about how to write a book and just, read it. And I'll tell you a good book I read. I don't remember the name of it, but it's written by the author Stephen King. It was recommended to me by my publisher way back. And it's a story about him, but it's telling you how he goes about, got into writing and how he developed his skills and as a writer. Of course, he's obviously very successful over the years. He's a genre writer in the sci-fi, if you will, and horror fiction stuff. But it was an intriguing book for me, and I found it very helpful. and I cannot remember the name of it. That's not cool. But if you go to, if you look him up on Google and look at some of the books he's, and pull up the books he's written, it's going to be listed on there very clearly. But that was a good read for me. But I definitely want to read a book about how to write a book. I wouldn't get wrapped up in it, but it would give you a good idea. And then just have a concept. Sit down and develop your concept on a piece of paper. Come up with your storyline, if you will. Your main character or characters, what you kind of want to convey. If you have a message, you don't have to have a message, but if you've got one, or if you want a theme in your book, theme to kind of ring out through the story, and then kind of go from there. Writers, major people that write have their own kind of techniques they come up with. Mine personally, that's my first book. I've just finished my next one. I'm signing on. I'm going to write I'm writing a trilogy, and the first book, matter of fact, just finished the first manuscript draft earlier today. I've struggled with the last chapter on that one for a while, but now I'm going to sleep on it for a couple of weeks, have my wife look at it, get her feedback, and then anything she wants me to do, I'll do. And then let it sit for a week or two, and then read it cold turkey from front to back. And if I'm satisfied, then I'll submit it to my publisher, who will take it from there. And we'll go through the editing process, which could be long, and that's all. But eventually, come out the other end and be published, and then I'll start working on the second book in the trilogy. Although I did write a overview executive summary, if you will, or memo about the trilogy, and in each book I've got a little story concept, characters, some plot points, if you will. So I have a basic high-level outline to help sell the trilogy. And then, like I said, I just finished the first draft of the first book. So
outstanding. Thanks again for coming on to the Misfit Nation. This is Larry Freeland, Chariots in the Sky. Thanks for taking some of your time to be with us on the show, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. It was great talking with you and sharing this, and you have a good rest.
That was awesome, chatting with Larry Freeland. Thanks for sharing your stories with us, and of course talking about your book, Chariots in the Sky. Be sure to check it out wherever you get your books, online or in actual bookstores. Support local businesses. So you know how we do this. Thanks for taking some of your time to spend with us on the Misfit Nation. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and share the link as much as possible. If you want to, please become a supporter to help us carry this thing on. We appreciate you. If you know someone that would bring that energy and have a great story to the show, have them visit our website, themisfitnation.com, and reach out to us. As always, till next time, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are